Hey guys, this is going to be a review of the AoShi V4 6x6, the new 6x6 by Moyu. In this video I'll be comparing the three versions as well as giving you recommendations on which one I think are worth getting, as well as comparing it to the WRM to see how it holds up against the old hardware. To start out with this video, I'll do a quick review of the double track version since this is kind of the middle version. Compared to the other versions, the single track doesn't have core magnets like this cube does, so it just has the standard piece magnets that we've seen in cubes for many years now. And then the triple track version is basically the double track, but it also has magnets that attract between the wings and the midges, kind of like the 5x5 and 7x7. But I'm going to be reviewing this cube because I think it's the middle ground option that is obviously just in between the other two in terms of features. So starting out with stats, this cube's 61mm, which makes it around the same size as the 5x5, maybe a little bit bigger. It's smaller than some other 5x5s on the market though, which makes it a really interesting size. And then it's also going to be a little smaller than the AoFu V5. So in terms of the Moyu cubes, it fits really well into the lineup. If you have big hands and are used to old cubes, you might find the size to be a bit of a problem, but as somebody who does like the WRM size and does use the bigger cubes from the past, I've had no troubles adjusting to this cube. And both this and the WRM feel pretty natural to me when just doing turns. So as far as the performance is concerned, this cube is pretty much as good as you'd expect from a top-of-the-line 6x6. The corner cutting's about what I would expect. There's nothing too crazy, but it doesn't fail to do any cuts that I would expect it to do. So no issues regarding that. Popping's also about the same as the WRM. I'd say it pops a little more just because I need to keep it on tighter tensions in order to prevent pops. With the WRM, I use pretty loose tensions and it doesn't pop that often, whereas with this cube on looser tensions, I was getting bigger pops a lot. So it is a little unfortunate that the cube's just a little more rigid because of the tight tensions, but I think that not popping is a really important feature for big cubes, so it's worth doing that if that's what it takes. The turning itself is really light and fast. Out of the box, the cube was actually extremely fast and really hard to control. I had to do a lot of work to slow it down to get to a usable speed. I think that if you just like really fast big cubes, then this will be good for you because it allows you to do a little more customization and making it feel different while also still being fast. So for the setup, I pretty much use Silk, Angstrom Lubes, and FC Super Honey, which is kind of funny because that's not really a combination you'd expect on a big cube, but these are all pretty slow lubes and that's what it takes to make this cube controllable. For the setup, I would suggest just going a little lighter with the slow lubes in the middle layers. If you have experience with the AoShi WRM, the cube has pretty slow inner layers in comparison to the other ones, so you want to go a bit lighter. But then for the outer two layers, you can go a bit heavier with the FC Super Honey and Gravitas and it'll be just fine. It might take a bit to break in, but then the result will be a lot more controllable and usable. If you currently have the WRM and are wondering how it compares to that cube, I would say that it definitely feels like this is the same line of cubes as this. They both have a pretty similar mechanism and it both reflects it on the turning. They're both pretty reliable, they turn pretty fast, the corner cutting's decent, and the overall feel is pretty similar. The main difference I would say does just come down to the fact that I have this cube tighter for the reduced popping, is that this cube just feels a lot more rigid. I feel like the WRM could get a little unstable at times and the core magnets really help it for me. But I think that with the V4 it's just a little more stable, which could be good, but I personally just think it's a little too much. I think it leads to a bit more catches during solves, which just makes me a little scared to use it officially because I do find myself messing up when I'm on good pace sometimes just because of nerves and it's just a little more punishing. I think that you definitely could appreciate the stableness depending on your turning style, but I just think that personally with the right core magnet setup, you can use a little more of an unstable cube to get the advantages of the flexibility while also still being stable enough. But yeah, overall, I wouldn't really say that the WRM or V4 are better than each other. I think that it's probably harder to get a better WRM because this cube is pretty much just the regular magnetic version, then you have to either mod it yourself or get a modded one if you want one that's closer in performance in terms of like features with these cubes. But I think that if you could get like a maxed out version of the AoShi WRM, it definitely still is viable compared to these. I think that for me, I might stick with the WRM just because of the reliability. I tend to do kind of bad in comp just because of nerves, so I'm a little scared of using cubes that are less reliable than what I currently have. So if it doesn't really offer an advantage in performance, I might just stick with what I'm used to. But it is still a pretty good cube, so I wouldn't be surprised if I do end up switching. It's just taking some time to get used to. So now comparing the versions to the other versions, I feel like the pricing is pretty fair, where the single track is a little more than the price of a stock WRM. The double track is $60, which is about what I would expect for a cube with the features it has in comparison to the single track. And then the triple track is a $10 upcharge from there at $70. As for which version I recommend, I would honestly say probably just skip out on the single track. Unlike the AoFu V5, I feel like it doesn't really offer a big difference over the WRM because the AoFu V5 at least is a lot more flexible and it's also smaller, so if you're interested in those features, it's a lot more easy to justify. I feel like the size difference or performance differences don't really justify getting this cube over the WRM, and I feel like if you do just want a cheaper one that's still competitive with other top cubes, I would actually just suggest going with the stock WRM. I think it's just a better cube and a bit easier to use and set up. And since the V4 I do find to be a bit catchier, I think that having the extra magnets does help a lot for me. So I wouldn't really suggest the single track. Unless you really want the 61mm size, I feel like the WRM is just a better cube to get. It is also a little cheaper. Next for the double track. So this cube is actually pretty surprising. I was expecting it to kind of just be a case of just get the triple track, because with the Alpha V5, people say that the double track is actually the worst version, even worse than the single. I actually think the double track has potential. It's definitely notably better than the single track out of the box, but then after stacking some extra magnets on the corners, I was actually able to get it to be very good. The original magnets, I believe, had over 3mm of space in between it and the ball core, which is a lot of space. I think that they're worried about the unevenness with even layer cubes, which doesn't really tend to be an issue on 6x6. So all I did is just added some extra magnets, and I actually really like it now. It kind of feels more like the 6x6s that I mod, where it just feels a lot more stable, where it's kind of fast, but the magnets help a lot with getting it back into place. And I think I would actually prefer this over a stock triple track version, because the magnets do help a lot more than the piece magnets do, I think. So overall, I feel like the cube's just kind of like poppier, where it kind of just like snaps into the cubic shape better, and it's really nice, especially for 3x3 stage, but I feel like it's pretty nice all around. So finally for the triple track, kind of like I was saying earlier, I think that if you're just going to use the cube out of the box, this is the version you should get. It's only $10 more than the double, which I think is a pretty fair price. And I feel like the piece magnets in the wings and the midges do actually make a pretty noticeable difference with stability. I feel like with the regular double track, I was finding it kind of losing its shape a bit. But then with the triple track, I feel like even just using a stock, it's perfectly fine. This one currently doesn't have the extra magnets, but I do plan on adding it. I'm going to experiment with a couple of different strengths. But either way, I think that this is still a pretty good cube even without the magnets. I just think that they definitely could have made a better cube if they were to use stronger core magnets. If I had to guess, they just went with weaker magnets, because with even layer cubes, you can notice a difference in the slices when you do PLL parity. Since there's an inner 3x3 middle layer in the middle, you're actually going to be turning it with one of the slices, and with the core magnets, if you're turning that extra layer, you're basically turning 8 extra magnets. So ideally, you should use weaker core magnets, but I don't actually think it matters that much in practice. Especially with how light this cube is, I just don't think that it really matters. And I think that the extra stability from stronger core magnets just helps a lot more. But yeah, so overall, to recap, I would say that probably just skip out on the single track, because I think that the WRM is just a better value and a bit better if you're going to use it without core magnets. And then for the triple versus double track, I would say that the triple is definitely the best out of the box, so if you just want the best one, you should just get this one. But then for the double track, if you're willing to add the extra magnets, it might make it better and be a cheaper cube. But I also think it's pretty close, where if I got one and added the magnets, I probably wouldn't be that disappointed if I preferred the other one, because it's still decently close. So in practice, I've kind of been switching between the double and the triple track, but I think that with the extra core magnets in both the double and the triple, I think my times are a little better on the triple. So in this solve, I am using the triple track, but I have gotten pretty similar times on the double track as well. In the double track, I added 3x1.5mm magnets to the corner feet, and that made it really good. But in the triple, I was a little too strong, where I liked it, but I think it might be too strong for some people who prefer weaker magnets in their big cubes. So I am hoping to get some weaker magnets so I could test them in the future and see what I think is the best. I have had a lot of people try doing the mod themselves, or also just try the cubes with the extra magnets, and they have all liked it a lot better, even compared to the triple track version. So I think it is definitely a missed opportunity that the magnets aren't stronger. But I think it is good that it's such an easy fix where you could just get the magnets and just add them, and it'll just make it better. So I might also make a video on how to mod it if I think it's worthwhile, but assuming that the magnets are the only change, then pretty much all you need to know is adding some extra magnets will improve it, and I'll probably put a link in the description where you could get those. But anyway, I want to give a big thank you to the Cubicle and Moyu for sending me these cubes to try. It was really fun being able to test all the versions this early and collaborate with people to try to figure out what the best versions of the cubes are. But yeah, I hope that this video was helpful. If you have any questions, then feel free to ask in the comments, and if this video helped you, then please subscribe. Bye!